Hi, it's Scott from One Man Band here. You're about to watch part two of a conversation I had with two teachers that just finished their first year of teaching. In this part, I ended up talking a lot more because they had some questions for me, and quite frankly, I like to talk, and specifically, I like to talk about band stuff. Before we begin, I want to point out two things. We got into the dialogue about instrument shortages and how to do an instrument drive, and I forgot two valuable resources. The first is the Play It Forward program from NPR, and the second is Band in Minnesota did a podcast talking to two directors that have run successful drives. So if this is something that you need more information on, I would encourage you to go to those two resources. We pick up here in the middle of a conversation, but I felt like it was pretty valuable, so I included it. And I hope you enjoy this part two of Masters of the Musiverse with first year teachers. Here's one thing that I experienced in probably about the first 10 years of my teaching was it seemed like everyone was so perfect in what they did. And it was like every time things were presented, it was like, look at this amazing thing that I'm able to craft every single time. And now that I've been doing it for a long time and I feel like I'm able to put out products like that, I realize there's so many warts in my education process with my students. There's so many problems that I want to be honest about because that's the only way for me to grow. And so again, I feel like this kind of conversation where we're just truthful with whoever, me, you, or the entire universe, because we're going to put it out there. So, all right. So let's talk about our state associations and how we feel they can maybe serve us better, whether it be MBDA or MMEA. Do you feel like there's anything they could do differently, especially for beginning teachers? Rebecca, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I actually have been thinking, or that's come up a lot while looking at the state resources and whatnot, is the resources or guidance for rural schools, like the small schools. There's a lot of things out there for like the small or middle size or even big, but I haven't found a lot for rural schools. And I know that that's something that a lot of the schools in my area would maybe appreciate, but just having, and maybe that's where the mentorship program comes into, but just having a bit more topics focused on like those small schools and maybe the schools needing flex instrumentation. How do you accommodate your small numbers? How do you build up numbers when you have 400 kids in your school to begin with? And like, what does it mean for like when you're trying to look at your retention? Are you actually like, those are all the things that I've been thinking a lot about.
And it's different, like you're right, it's different. Your school size, it's different. And even you and I, like we've got very different school sizes. So we can talk about it, but you do probably need resources that are guided and developed by people that have been in these small schools. Now that's good. And I think you're right. A mentorship program would definitely be part of that. What about you, Rafael? Anything that you can think of that our state associations could do to better serve you?
I haven't thought about that, and just listening to Rebecca's answer, I could relate to a lot of that. So I'm gonna just bounce some ideas off of her too. I like when Rebecca, when you said that, like, how do you get retention with 400 students? If you only have 400 students to begin with, how do you get a bigger program, and like, what steps do you have to take? And one thing that I thought about right away is like, what if, like, for example, if you live in a low income zone, like with students who can't afford instruments, and if you don't have the budget in your program to buy new instruments, like what do you do in that case if there's interest from students? Like I've thought about that for a long time now, and it's good that we asked this question because it's, now that we're talking about it, it's good to bounce ideas off of each other.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to be vocal about that in a way that's not, blaming anybody for it, because it's nobody's
Right.
it's nobody's fault. I mean, but you'll find that, for example, if you talk to like your music store rep, for me it's Schmidt Music, they might say, hey, look, we've got programs that can help you with that. Or have your local newspaper do an article on it, because we did when we were in instrument need, and a bunch of instruments flooded in because people are like, yeah, I got a trumpet that's been sitting in the closet for X amount of years. And a lot of times the school should just be able to give that person a tax deduction for donating the instrument. And so it's really like a win-win thing. But you have to be vocal about that. You have to go seek people to like your local newspaper, like I said.
One thing we didn't actually talk a lot about, which I was surprised, but retention.
Oh,
how
gosh.
do you keep your kids in band and not take it personally when they're not in band anymore?
Okay, so the question of retention. Well, I mean, I think that it's such an intricate question. So let's go to the taking it personally part first, because I think it feeds me. I do take it personally, and I try not to, and I like have to do a self check on myself, like deep breathing. Okay, this is not my fault. When a kid leaves, especially at the high school level, because that's most of my job, I've always felt that I've got good relationships with kids no matter what. The kids that have left my program, now they'll maybe comment on this video and say, no way. But I've felt that I've had a good relationship, and this is important for me for a number of reasons. One is because they're human beings and I value them whether they're with me or not. Two, I want to keep the door open for if they want to come back, because that happens every once in a while, because they get a year out and they're like, I actually miss making music. Three, it lets me do like market research. And so after a few months where the kid is out of the program and they maybe feel the ability to be a little bit more honest, I usually try to track them down in a friendly way and say, hey, I'm just kind of curious, what are some of the things that we did that, kind of pushed you out? And a lot of times I find that it isn't me. It's not the program. It's actually their schedule.
Yeah.
And so if I can, then I go to the counselors and say, look, this kid quit because of this. And then we can, sometimes we get footing to like make some real changes. If it's not just my feeling, I feel if we move this, it'll be better for the program. But if I can say, no, these kids quit because of the nursing program, which I think is awesome, and I want them to be a CNA, but I also want them to be in band. And then people are like, yeah, let's push band to third period. They can do both. Perfect. So that's one thing that, like that oftentimes we'll find out, or I'll find out that it's something that I don't want to change. Like I had a kid that did not like that I required kids to participate in solo and ensemble. And they were like, that was their hill they were going to die on. And for me, that's what I think it's one thing that I think is really important, and I'm not really willing to give on. I'm willing to be flexible with, but I'm not willing to get rid of that requirement. And so then I just have to say, then I guess we can't, that this won't work, or, whatever. So that in the high school level, but I think that looking, like when it comes to retention, being investigative is really important. Like find out like what year it is. Like, are a bunch of kids quitting between 6th and 7th grade? Okay, why? What's the experience? What's the outlier? Is it something going on in a Phi Ed class? Like they don't like the idea that they have to shower and come to band, or like kids can be super weird about that kind of stuff. And if you can try to figure that out some way by having an open relationship with your students. I also think that we take a look back and we see, okay, what could I be doing differently to be more welcoming, more fun, and make this experience better for kids? Like is it me? Because that's sometimes where it can be something you're doing. I have this constantly where like, oh man, just a few years ago, I was talking to my wind ensemble. It's my top group. And I would say that, at the risk of sounding unhumble, my students love me, right? It happens to us, a lot of band directors, we get to know the kids very well and yada, yada, yada. And a lot of times their first experience with me was in 9th grade. And so we were talking, I found out that some 9th graders were scared of me. And I couldn't figure this out because I feel like I'm a big teddy bear, like goofy guy. And I'm talking to my wind ensemble about this, and like, we're not scared of you. Like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, what about your freshman year? Like, oh yeah, no, your freshman year, we were terrified of you. So it made me kind of take a step back this last year and think about how I was presenting myself with the ninth graders, because it wasn't my band. It was somebody else's band that I would go into. And I was always in such a hurry. I would like blast through the door and be like, all right, listen up. This is the sheet for pep band. Sign up. On January 10th, we got to this thing. We're going to go. And then I would leave thinking that I just hit them really quick with information. That's what I needed to do. Their perspective was, this guy's crazy and a little bit angry. And so I think, like the more we can do to develop the relationship with students is we can maybe see that in ourselves. But again, most of the time it's not about me. It's about outliers, about other things going on, and you can have impact on those things too.
Do you have study hall?
We have actually got a real great study hall system that I feel like works to our advantage. And I think everybody likes it too. I could be mistaken because I haven't had real conversations with everybody on it, but our study hall study schedule rotates. It's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and like Tuesday will be math, and then science class, and then English and social studies. And so the kids pretty much guaranteed 1 or 2 study halls every week, but it rotates on the classes. When kids don't have work to do in that class, a lot of times then they'll come down and they'll do lessons with me on those days. So I really like that system, and it prevents things like this. And again, I think taking that information you have and not having it be about how you're feeling about something, because a lot of times administration, school boards, people don't like your feelings. They want facts, right? But if you can say, no, these 5 students I talked to, they quit because of the scheduling thing. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, with maybe a few exceptions, those administrators and school board members want to see you be successful. And so if you can present that information to them like that, they're probably going to help you find solutions. Or even better, the thing that I've noticed works the best is if I say, okay, here's my problem, here's my evidence, here's the solution that I could sell everybody on, then bring it to your administrator. Because administrators are really busy people too. Like, we don't like to admit that as teachers. We think that administrators get lots of money and have lots of time. But the truth is that they're really, really busy people that have other bigger problems to solve than your 4 or 5 kids that are quitting band. Yeah. But if you can come to them and say, hey, here's an easy solution that doesn't affect anybody else, or that I've sold other people on, at least, again, my experience is that administrators go for that kind of conversation more. Oh yeah, I think there's maybe one other thing about retention that I'd like to say is that that conversation with a student, like the second I find out a student's going to quit, in a very warm, pleasant, welcoming way, that's non-judgmental. Hey, Annika, could you come over here? I heard that you're maybe not going to do band next year. I saw it wasn't in your schedule. What's going on? Well, I don't like playing French horn. Okay. Would you like to play trumpet? Yeah. Okay. You want to play trumpet next year? That'd be great. All right. I try to micromanage in that way, in like figuring out this one sliver of a problem. Because again, sometimes it's like, well, I don't have time in my schedule. Actually, for the student that I mentioned, it was a scenario that I created. It wasn't. She had to drop band because of her schedule for next year. But I've had plenty of conversations that, in fact, a saxophone player of all people wanted to switch to trombone. Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it. And he was like, now he's like, oh, band's great, so.
Nice.
That actually brings up another question. I'm sorry, I'm full of questions.
Perfect.
How do you handle kids wanting to switch instruments in high school, or just in general? What's your philosophy on that?
I think the first part of my philosophy is it's case by case. I don't have a single answer, because there are so many things that come into play there. So like if it's a kid that's already bounced on 5 different instruments, I ask a lot more questions because I'm like, it seems like you're just trying to find the instrument that's going to be easy for you, and the truth is that the instrument doesn't exist, or it
Right.
does, and it's called a kazoo, and we don't have a place for it here. And by the way, you can't keep a tune anyway, so kazoo would be hard. Okay, so yeah, so I mean that's my first one, and then like I look at instrumentation. So I'll have a kid that'll say, I don't want to play trumpet anymore, as it can be. And that's either comes about because they want to quit or they want to change. And it's like, that's great because I need a tuba player. And so what I'll do in cases like that in the high school, it's really great if you can find a couple kids that will be productive, because I'll send them out with 2 tubas into a practice room. And even I've had the most, how do I say this, or maybe the least academically concerned student would be a better way to say it, go out and do massive amount of works on their own or with a buddy in a practice room, and come back and like been excellent, tuba players or bass clarinet or whatever it might be, because sometimes kids like that just need that autonomy anyway. So I think that again, it's case by case, and you maybe want to be hardened in certain areas because it's like, well, that's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for you to switch from, I don't know what, percussion to, actually, no, that's not a good example. Like tuba to oboe. Like that's not going to be a good switch for you. That's not going to work well. Can we negotiate? Can we find somebody that's going to work? And again, developing that relationship with kids so that like, hey, is there something else here? Is it because you just broke up with somebody that happens to be sitting next to you? So can we keep you in the section and move you over? So it's things like that too. So case by case, knowing your kids, what's best for your program. I think it's just weighing all that stuff. And honestly, like I've discovered I get a lot further if I just kind of like if a kid comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about switching instruments, and you're like, oh, cool. That would be really cool. What do you want to do? Like a lot, like sometimes we're even able to circle back around and like, I guess I don't want to switch. But if I start like hard nose, like, oh, why do you want to switch? Now we're in an argument where they're not going to speak their real truth. They're going to try to hide things from you. So building relationships and having trust is really important.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you go about picking music for each of your groups?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, like I start dreaming early. Like when September hits, I'll probably have my year programmed, especially for my high school groups, because they're a little more predictable. I feel, again, personal. And so I'll have my rep pick for the entire year. But I've been, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have that ability with flexibility built in, because this doesn't work or whatever. And then I start dreaming about the next year. Like in the fall the year before, I start dreaming. I have a notebook. And, like I might hear like a junior trumpet player all of a sudden have this beautiful tone and be like, oh, Manu Mysterium, that needs to happen next year. And so I write it down on my list, and sometimes with a little note. By the time I get done, I don't think I have my notebook right by me. It is a mess, right? It's just, and then I go to some resources that I have that I've developed for myself about kind of rotation of things that I value. So, for example, I want every kid to graduate here having some kind of experience with Holst's music, with Granger's music. I'm really understanding more and more about underrepresented composers and how important that is to me and to my students. And so I'm putting all that stuff into play and then starting to design what I want. I, again, want enough flexibility there, because I tried for a few years to be super rigid, and I had like this 3-year plan for my kids. And then I found that like, oh man, this Vaughan Williams I picked out, it just isn't working. And, like I felt too pigeonholed. But having a structure gives me a place to start from, and that includes like concert cycles. Like we do a Pops concert every spring. And that helps me. Like, I usually think of a theme, and then I start finding music. It's the same idea. So like this spring's Pops concert was supposed to be movie music, which is, you know, a really easy one because there's a gajillion things. And I even include, especially with the spring Pops one, I include the kids in on, and they love days like where I'm like, all right, let's get into JW Pepper. And they start looking for things on JW Pepper. By the way, I usually exclusively order from Schmidt Music, stamp of approval there. I've just got a really good relationship with Schmidt Music. But all of our Minnesota music companies are great. I try not to order mail order when I don't have to. But anyway, we use Schmidt, we use JW Pepper, and we start looking for stuff, and we create a list. And you know, that's a really fun way to do it too. And that sometimes I'll have that concert already programmed, and I'll still let the kids do like that thing because it might influence me, and I might decide to put that piece in, and then there's more buy-in to that concert too. Ever since I've done that, the kids have loved that concert more and more. Plus the Pops concert anyway. So yeah, I mean, so like definitely something I spent a lot of time with. Usually about July, you know, maybe mid-July, I start challenging myself to listen to one new piece of music every day.
Nice.
Some directors will just take a whole day and they'll just listen. I can't do that. It doesn't fit me. And so I'll just wake up in the morning and I'll find some composer that I heard about, or I'll go to some, you know, somebody's website and look for some music and listen to something I haven't heard of before. And even that doesn't always get me that piece, but it gets me in that mindset, right? Because a lot of times in the summer, like, I don't want to be in that mindset. I want to be, you know, I want to be somewhere warm or fishing or whatever. So like being thoughtful about that does help me plan as well. All right, so here's a question. You guys will be the first ones getting this, but I'm going to ask everybody, I think, this question. You need to develop a dream suite of 3 pieces of music that go together, and tell us what they are. You don't need to go any further details. So I know this will change for me, so this will be interesting, but I'm going to buy you guys time by telling you my dream suite would start with the Chaconne from Holst's First Suite, because
That's mine.
Insane. So good.
So good. Okay, so my second movement would be the Siciliano from Malcolm Arnold's Prelude, Siciliano, and Rondo. And I won't sing it for you because that'll be brutal for everybody involved. And the third movement of this very long piece would be Aurora Awakes by John Mackey.
Oh,
I
wow.
love that piece.
Because, yeah, it's one of my favorites right now. I just did it last year with a group. And if you don't know, the very last chord of that piece is actually taken from the very last chord of Holst's First Suite.
So you've thought very hard about this.
I thought we were doing, okay. I definitely thought never mind.
It's okay. It's okay. So like, we're just going to give this a try. So, and if you're still struggling with it, it's fine. So Rebecca, are you ready?
Sure. It might be a bit more vague than yours.
That's
but,
fine. That's fine.
I for sure was going to have Holst's First Suite, the first movement, at the start. And then I couldn't remember. I was actually Googling before we started this, but Julie Giroux had this piece called, I think, Sun and Sea, or that might be a movement of this big piece. It's newer. I heard it at Midwest, I think.
Okay.
And it's just really, it's this 5-movement work, but one of those movements, any of them, because they're all amazing, would go in that second suite spot, or the second spot. And then I am a big David Mislanka fan. I'm not picky, so really anything of his could be the closer, and it would be wonderful.
Mother Earth Fanfare could be a really cool closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Rafael, what was that? What did we play? The most recent one.
Give Us This Day?
Give Us
No.
This Day.
Yes. That's just a good one. It's just good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Rafael, you've been thinking about this again. I could see the gears spinning.
I read your email last night, and I was like, "What am I gonna say?" And
I know.
I think I know what I'm gonna say now.
It's my way of asking, like, what are some of your favorite pieces? Is really, but I think in just a different fashion.
It's creative.
I think I'm ready though.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Holst, like super, like #1 fan. So I feel like the first movement of Chaconne, of the first suite in E flat has to be the first movement.
Yeah.
It has to. So with that being said, the second movement, there's a piece called Crump by Scott McAllister, which I discovered this year. It's super cool.
Okay.
If you haven't heard it, you should.
I'm gonna put it on my list right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I would have that be the second movement.
Crump?
And to finish it off, yep, Crump with a K. And my the third movement would be Children's March by Percy Granger.
Gotta get some Granger in there.
Yeah.
You have to.
That's pretty sweet. All right. Well, Rebecca, Rafael, thank you so much for joining us here on the One Man Band channel and the Masters of the Musiverse series. I wish you guys the best of luck as you're preparing for your second year.
Thanks so much.
All right. All right. We'll see you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bah! That worked? Did you get rid of them?
I only ever get one. Yeah,
you had one like earlier too. Way back in the beginning.
I know.